A few months back, my 3-year-old was introduced to the Ghostbusters, so of course he wanted a Proton Pack. Now the only one I could find online was about $95, or there was an inflatable one that I knew he'd pop in about 2 days, so I looked around the house to see if there's anything I could use to make him one. So I managed to turn this into this. So the first thing I did was I took that container and a few other items and spray painted those black. While I was waiting for that to dry, I looked around for a few other things I could use. I found some old knobs and a flexible hose from under the sink. I also had part of a shop vac that I wasn't using. I also had an old briefcase with a shoulder strap that I never used, so I cut the strap off and I used that for the back of the case. My wife had bought him a sweatshirt for the Ghostbusters and it had this tag on it, so I just cut that off and glued that on. One thing I did have to purchase was a light source. I went to a local hardware store and I found these cool LED lights. It actually came in a 2-pack, so I used one of them right here and I took an old red t-shirt, cut out some of it so it glowed red instead of white. The one thing I did find was this plastic container was cracking when I was trying to cut it. I used an X-Acto knife and tried to be careful, but that's something to keep in mind of. Now, someone that's a lot more handy than myself could probably do a much better job at this. This is not my thing, but you find when you have a child that you'll do anything for them, and this is something that I wanted to make him right away so he could play with it. So I used what I had around the house and hoped for the best. A few things I learned. I did not fit this for my child because I wanted to surprise him with it. So luckily, the shoulder straps fit pretty well, but I do find he has a hard time pulling this out and getting it back in on his own because of his little arms. Maybe I should have mounted it on the side or moved it a little lower. I did put a screw down here in the bottom so that this stays in place and doesn't fall all the way through. The paint I used was just some black paint that I had. I found that after a few months it's chipping, but it's a 3-year-old boy. He's going to be pretty rough with things, especially when he's fighting ghosts. So when attaching the hose to the box itself, I cut a hole just large enough to fit the fitting in, and then I screwed it in on the other side and tightened it up, and that seems to be holding pretty well. Again, I would probably find something a little less rigid than this because I do find he has a hard time moving it around, and maybe something a little more flexible would do the trick a little bit better. But again, I just used what I had. So there you go. There's how you can make your very own Proton Pack for less than $20 with things you might have laying around the house.